Hello, welcome back. Now, my next guest is a lifesaver. Pete McCleave has managed to save the lives of 20 people and is now looking for someone to save his. Pete was diagnosed with a form of blood cancer in 2017 and was given just 7 years to live unless he could find a stem cell donor. So Pete set up a campaign to encourage more people to become donors, and he managed to find matches for 20 other cancer patients. That's amazing, Pete, that you did that. Because when you were starting out on this, you probably never imagined that you would get 20 matches.
No, when we started out, 10,000 donors was the initial target. It was a bit of a stretch target, and we were told, actually, you're not likely to get that, so you might want to sort of scale it in, but, it's no good to anyone. I think it was more of a challenge than anything, so, we hit the 10,000, we got our first couple of matches, but the odds are so heavily stacked against people finding their match that we need more people, so 10,000 was a start for 10, and the important thing was to spread the message and find improve the odds for everybody, and not just in numbers, but across the diversity and breadth of demand for people with blood cancers who need that life-saving tech.
So this all started because of your own diagnosis with blood cancer. So just take us back to what happened.
Yeah, wholly unexpected. I was about 36 years old, and I'd spent 2016 training to run an Ironman triathlon, so that was a challenge to me. Finished the race and unexpectedly ended up in hospital 2 days afterwards with a bit of a heady concoction of pneumonia, sepsis and Legionnaires. And in a strange way, I know I say it's lucky in a sort of twisted sort of way. If I hadn't have done the race and developed those illnesses, I wouldn't have been within the NHS, because ultimately it was a chance CT scan that led to the identification of the blood cancer, and life sort of stops there. You kind of assume you are invincible, and then you're given this prognosis of 7 years and an incurable blood cancer. So everything changed.
You're talking about this quite matter of fact, but that must have just totally rocked your world when you heard that.
It did. The first couple of weeks were horrendous. To say I probably descended into a bit of a spiral of depression wouldn't be too far from the truth. And you're asking yourself, why me? What have I done? And you sort of go back over things you may have done, putting two and two together. But the sad fact is that doctors tell you it's just pure bad luck. They don't know what causes these sorts of things. But to try and cope and get to a stage where I could function again, I had to try and find something to take agency of, take control of. And the two people in my life, or the three people, my wife and my two sons, were the key focus for me. It was no good me moping and feeling sorry for myself, because I needed to be there for them, and being able to, when I was told I had the 7-year prognosis, that did come with the caveat that if I could find a stem cell donor, then I could look beyond that 7-year prognosis, and that was something I could hold on to, and I could do something about, and that's what helped me to, I guess, navigate those turbulent times.
So how does it work in terms of then finding a stem cell donor? So if you're given that information, then of course you're obviously thinking, right, we need to find it. But how does it work? What happens next?
It's a game of numbers and a game of diversity. So to actually register to be a potential lifesaver, every single one of us has the potential. If you're aged between 16 and 55, you can become a stem cell donor, and it's as simple as swabbing your cheek. So everyone knows about the COVID swabs that we've been shoving up our noses for the last couple of years. It's the same swab, but you put it in your mouth. It takes 3 minutes, super simple, painless. And once you've done that, you return it to the charity DKMS who administer the process. And it takes about 6 weeks, but you're then on the register. And it's a huge game of numbers. You're effectively you're looking for your genetic twin. So you've got a blood cancer patient who needs someone who can donate their stem cells. And, everyone's got stem cells. They're the precursor to every cell in your body. But if you can match with your genetic twin, they can donate those stem cells to the person with the blood cancer. And although not in my case, cure it, with many you can manage cancers better with that treatment.
And then what's the process? So obviously the sending off your DNA to be tested, it's super easy, but then what is the actual donor process like?
Yeah, in 90% of cases, it's like an extended blood donation process. There's a lot of myths and, from like drills, bones and nasty conversations. In 90% of cases, it is like an extended blood donation process. So needle in one arm, goes into what's called an apheresis machine. It takes the stem cells out of your blood, then returns the blood to your other arm. It takes about 4 or 5 hours, and then you go home, having been taken to one of the private clinics where they administer this, and your stem cells will grow back in a couple of weeks, but you're donating to that patient. And in 10% of cases, primarily when you're trying to donate to a child, they'll take it from your hip bone. It's under a general anaesthetic, so you don't feel anything. I've had both done, by the way, and it feels like someone's punched you on the hip. That's as far as it goes.
And I know you're still looking for your match, aren't you? But you did manage to get one of your mates to sign up to the Alex, who joined the donor register, and Alex Christopher. And you have actually, you signed up to this and ended up becoming a donor, didn't you? Tell us a bit about it.
Well, yeah, like Pete said, he's a specimen of physical fitness. He came into the office one day and told us what he'd been diagnosed with. We were absolutely shell-shocked. And your first instinct is to say, like, well, what can we do to help? How can we support you? And I think it's almost joking. Thinking back, Pete was like, oh, you could join the stem cell register. Maybe you'll save my life. We all did it, like, no-brainer. And it's every bit as easy as Pete said it is.
Yeah.
You sign up, you get a swab through the post, swab your cheeks. Job's done in terms of that aspect.
And you actually have already saved someone's life from this, haven't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I matched with a chap who all I knew for quite some time was a chap in his 50s or 60s in the US. So I was one of the lucky 90%. I'm not so lucky because it's most of the people who go through this donation process, go through the peripheral stem cell donation process. So I was down in London in a hospital for 4 hours and then back out, like Pete says, doing some touristy stuff in London, sat in Pret having a coffee and a cake. And I've given a chap called Patrick, who I'm sure we'll meet shortly, 4.5 years and counting of his life back. And it's just something that doesn't really sink in from me as an individual. I can't quite compute how 4 hours of my time has given somebody back 4 Christmases, 4 birthdays.
Yeah. Were you scared at all going through the process? Because I imagine there's a lot of people watching this who are now thinking, yeah, I should do it, but I'm scared about the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the Arndale in Manchester when I got the call to say that I'd been identified as a match, and in that moment you think, wow, what does this entail? Like, you're not always fully aware of what the end-to-end process will be. I've always had reservations about general anaesthetic because I'd never had to go through that process. I mean, fortunately I have now. I know it's an absolute breeze, but in that moment I was like, oh God, can I go under anaesthetic? Can I have someone prodding around with? But part of you just then realises you'd go through whatever. To save another person's life, you will do whatever. So yeah, that sort of quickly subsides. So that scare factor is just almost non-existent when you're in that moment.
Yeah, and it's amazing you did that. And you mentioned Patrick. We can actually talk to Patrick now. So Patrick joins us live from Boston in the States. I know it's very early in the morning there. So Patrick, thanks for joining us. But tell us a bit about your story in this. You tell us what happened here.
In August of 2018, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, which, from my understanding, is the most aggressive form of blood cancer you can have. And my prognosis was, the doctor said, if you don't get treatment, you'll be dead in 3 months. And as you can imagine, it was like getting a punch in the gut. And I said, okay, what do we need to do? And she said, pack your bags, you'll be here for a month. And I went in and I got my initial, chemotherapy treatment to try to knock me into remission, which was successful. But I still needed a life-saving bone marrow transplant or a stem cell transplant to save my life. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to get that from Alex.
Yeah. And so what was that like, finding out that you had a match and, a lad from the UK?
So they had contacted me and said that they had found a match, and I was told, I think at the time, back in 2018, there were, I think, 30 million people in the registry. I could be wrong, but about 30 million, and that he was my only 100% genetic match. So, like Pete said, he's my genetic twin, which I didn't even know existed. I was thrilled to hear that, but then what they said to me was, we found a match, but we need to go back to that person and see if they still want to do it. And I kind of, my stomach kind of dropped, and I'm thinking, what if this person doesn't want to do this again? Then what? But gratefully, thankfully, rather, Alex was willing to move forward.
Yeah, and it saved your life. How does that feel?
Stuff I put into words. He saved my life, and I look at it that they both did. Because if it weren't for Pete's efforts, we wouldn't have found Alex. Alex had just said, I'm 4 Christmases and birthdays and counting. It'll be 5 years on Valentine's Day that I had my transplant. I feel great.
Yeah, gosh, you can see.
I'm sorry, it's emotional, and I apologize. It's hard.
Hey, don't apologise. This is what people need to see and hear, because Pete, the key to all of this is getting more people, isn't it, to register?
Absolutely, it's numbers, it's diversity, and it's incumbent upon everyone to try and do this. You know, one thing I've realised through the campaign I've been running is that we can't wait for authorities, politicians to do this for us. It's really important that everyone realises the power they've all got right now watching this to influence the odds. And if you choose to register, fantastic. If you can go to, the gobforgood.com website, click on the link, order your kit, it's super simple. But even if you don't register, please tell everyone you know, spread the message, because it's as simple as a cheek swab and you can potentially save a life. And that's all we can do. It's just educating and spreading the message as far as wide as we can do. And as you heard from Patrick, it's not just staying alive, it's what that brings. It's Christmases, it's birthdays, it's time with family and doing useful things that I took for granted before I got diagnosed, and I can't do that anymore. But it's the depth of those lives behind what you're trying to deliver is what a stem cell transplant can give you. It's not just staying alive, it's what you can do with that time.
Yeah, amazing. It's such an important message. Thank you so much. Thanks, Patrick, as well, and thanks